In today's episode, I'll be giving my recap, reaction, and review to Netflix's second show of the hit German show Dark. So let's dive right into season 2 of Dark. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the dub cast. Coming into season 2, I was a little bit worried that we'd be, you know, expanding upon season 1 and just being having more questions than answers. And at this point, I think I can say that that is true. Though some of the stuff that just happened just watching the finale is absurd. I mean, there's so much to get to in this last season. Obviously, this season was 2 episodes shorter, but they have a little bit longer run times in each episode. So I'm eager to get to season 3 and see how this all concludes. I have a pretty good idea of what I think is going to happen at the end. I think this is all pretty linear and everything is just one timeline. And people try and change the timeline, but that is the timeline. I think that's kind of the gist of the show. That's what I'm picking up on. But everything else is there's a lot of complicated shit. I mean, you have the travelers. We get to learn a little bit about them throughout this season, and with certain reveals throughout that of who the actual travelers are. Seems like we kind of trimmed down the character pool, so that should be interesting for season 3. With the nuclear event that takes place. I mean, every episode is X days until the apocalypse, which I thought was interesting. And then, the apocalypse still happening. Just crazy, crazy shit I mean, last season we left off when we were heading to 2052. It was like, is this show going to go off the rails? 19, we're in 1921 in this season, so there's 5 timelines to establish. Now at the end of the season, we're looking at different worlds. I'm a little worried that I don't want an ending that's up for interpretation. I respect that. Sopranos, one of the greatest shows of all time. But I like when things are just definite. And these are the answers, and here's the answers, and that's that. I'm not sure if I'm here for, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Obviously this show has strong themes of time being very important. The Journey Through Time book is referenced multiple times, and like I mentioned in the season 1 review, there's these 3 sort of groups. You have the Jonas group of Jonas, the stranger Jonas, and then another person we meet this season, and then you have Claudia. What's Claudia's objective? Then you have Noah. What's Noah's objective? So all those fighting against each other, what they believe is to be true, and the prophecies, and Noah uses religion a lot. I think this is a really interesting dynamic. I think I don't know. I was told, my coworker said that she didn't like season 2 as much as season 1. I'm not even sure if she watched season 3. My friend who told me to watch the show, he thinks it picks up in season 2 and 3. I think these seasons were pretty on par with each other. You get shock reveals. The finale for season 2 was like so crazy that it almost went overboard. But I think I got season 1 slightly above it. Although season 2 does have stronger episodes. I really like episode 6, the party episode. But yeah, I think this was another great show of television. I mean, people should be watching this. I know it's a German show, so you don't want to read that much. You have to pay attention. You literally can't look away for 2 seconds. Like if I miss something, I rewind it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited for season 3. I thought season 2 was right on par with season 1. 2 pretty good, pretty great seasons of television, and I'm ready for this third season. Uh, we're gonna get into it episode by episode, so I don't want to waste time talking about some of the bigger plot points because we're going to get to them. So let's get into the episode by episode breakdown, starting with episode 1 titled Beginnings and Endings. So remember in season 1, we were left off with Jonas seemingly being in 2052. Now, just like season 1, they open up with a quote here, and if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. So I think this could be correlated as a metaphor for time in this show because everyone kind of gazes long into time, especially our main 3 characters of Claudia, Noah, and Jonas, and they try and like make their best deal with time and try and figure out how to best deal with or how to best figure out time, and they think their way is the right way with time, and then it's like in reverse, time kind of is taking away from them, taking away from their relationships, and making them do all this crazy shit. I mean, pretty much all of the characters besides Noah have like we see Jonas lose somebody in the last episode. We see Claudia lose someone later in the season. So I think, trying to prevent stuff, it kind of eats away at you, and like that kind of screws up your world. So I think that's kind of what that quote's about. Could be totally off on that. So we're actually going to start the season out in 1921, where we meet the young version of Noah. Looks to be, I think he's late teens, early 20s. I think they told us that. So he was brought in by a man named Adam. Now, I don't think maybe we had some offhanded references to Adam in season 1, but I don't think we really knew who Adam was. And Adam is a major through line of this season 2. And so this man believes in the prophecy, and this causes Noah to kill the other man he's with right now in cold blood with an axe, which, knowing Noah, this isn't that surprising for Noah because we know he's violent. He seemingly killed those kids in season 1. But yeah, so when he kills the guy in cold blood, it's like whatever, but the guy kind of accepts it, which I thought was weird. So there's some sort of prophecy thing going on here, the religion thing. We can kind of see how it reads into that. And then Noah is now reading a book that says 2020 is the beginning of the last cycle. And Jonas also reads that in 2052 when we pick up with him. Not a ton of interesting stuff with Jonas happening in this episode, but, he is in 2052 and he reads on the calendar that 2020 is the beginning of the last cycle. So the last cycle has begun after season 2. So we'll see where that heads into season 3. So Claudia actually is going to survive this apocalyptic event. Jonas being in 2052 kind of is walking around realizing that there's not a lot of people out here. There's a tombstone grave that we'll get to later. But yeah, so he's realizing there's an apocalyptic event. Claudia did survive the apocalyptic event and left a message for someone to read. So most of this season, we go back to 2020 as our main timeline. This is a couple months after the events of season 1, where this is 6 days before the apocalypse, as they always mention in the episodes, how many days before the apocalypse it is. Poor Regina, man. She looks very unwell with her cancer. It's been a couple months. We saw in season 1 she had that cancer diagnosis. Luckily for us, Regina is going to make it out of the season alive, which, a lot of people in the town of Winden don't. So, nonetheless, Regina not looking great with her cancer, lost a lot of hair. We see her all season being like tied to the bed basically. Doesn't seem to have high mobility. It sucks. Cancer sucks. So feel bad for Regina. She had somewhat of an up and down in season 1. I was kind of neither here nor there on her. But it's tough to see someone going through this. So as Jonas is walking around through the graveyard of the people who passed away in the apocalyptic event, we see 2 big names that are among the dead from the apocalypse, Alexander and Martha. So obviously Martha is one of the main characters of this show, Jonas's main love interest. So I thought that was like, whoa, if Martha's not here in season 3, what are we going to do? And, you really think that by the end of season 2, but I guess the one version of Martha is not going to make it through the apocalyptic event. So future Jonas is talking to current Hannah. So this is stranger Jonas. It's kind of hard to differentiate between all the different versions of each character, so I'll try to do my best to explain who they are. The bearded man, the stranger, we know who this is. He's talking to 2020 Hannah, and he explains the whole story of what's going on. Interesting choice. I mean, not really interesting from his perspective. It's his mom, but us knowing Hannah, it's like, dude, it's Hannah, and we'll definitely get into Hannah as we move along through the season. But now Hannah knows everything. I'm glad they kind of just told a lot of people about this story, so it wasn't like people picking at the mystery when we're like, we have other shit going on. I think that's something this show does well, is just like move the plot along and makes it every episode very interesting. I think they always try and do like a montage of what the important events of the episode were, and then leave it off with some sort of cliffhanger so you watch the next episode. That's kind of their ending format of each episode. Nonetheless, we're in the middle of the episode now, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But yeah, so Hannah is now in the know about everything. And then we see 1921 Noah head to the church where there's current Noah. They have a nice conversation. Everything's connected. We've kind of got this message thrown in our face a lot of times, so now we know everything is connected. And meanwhile, with Jonas in 2052, there's this sort of woman who is running things, doesn't speak, uses ASL. And this should have been obvious. I didn't realize who it was. But this was one of the bigger shocks of episode 1, it's Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, the little girl who we just know is this like kind deaf lady, or not deaf lady, but deaf girl, tries to do her best, kind of gets lost in season 1, is really barely on the show in season 1. But she's leading the group in 2052. She's this brutal person with automatic weapons. It's like, shit, man, what happens to Elizabeth? And she hangs 2 people in front of Jonas and the crowd that they're with. So it's like, she ain't taking no shit. So Elizabeth goes through some shit, which we still don't really know after the end of season 2. But damn, bro, that was like the big shock of episode 1 to me. Elizabeth, 32 years later, is now like a leader of an apocalyptic group. So I thought that was interesting. Noah has a boss man named Adam. We met him before, just in passing earlier this episode through name drop. Adam has a very deformed face. You actually, if you're on Netflix, you see the picture of Adam, and you're like, who the fuck is this guy? Because we don't even meet him until season 2. But here's Adam, and Noah kind of reports to him, is like seemingly one of his biggest followers. And Adam tasks him with finding missing pages from before the apocalypse. So this is this part of the season was something that really confused me, was Noah trying to find these missing pages from what book. I think it's like a book that Claudia wrote about how everything's connected, maybe, but that's kind of Noah's side quest through this season. So Elizabeth is looking at an old picture and recognizes Noah from the old picture, which is a foreshadowing to future events that we'll get into the season finale, but that was interesting there. Nice, another connection that I didn't pick up on or didn't know. Wooler, the one-eyed police officer, and the prostitute in 2020 who lives in a little trailer off the nuclear power plant parking lot, they're siblings. So not sure if either one of them will appear in season 3, maybe definitely through flashbacks probably, but yeah, those 2 people are siblings, which I didn't guess or didn't know at all. So there's something for you. And a big message of this episode is the Sic Mundus Creatus Est. So people in the past and the future keep saying this. In 2052, they keep saying it. Noah's people keep saying it. It's like this is going to be a common theme throughout the season. We don't know what this means until later on, but this is definitely something I wanted to get into. I remember this was an episode title in season 1. Finally, to wrap up this episode, we have Francesca. Keeps calling Magnus. Magnus is very suspicious of her after she is once again doing drop-offs with the prostitute. So I don't know. This was a little bit of a weird situation that I think we'll get an explanation on in the next episode. But yeah, so Francesca has returned to doing the little drop-offs this time for the prostitute, dropping her off something in that little box on the train tracks. And Magnus, of course, is stalking her because he's Magnus and is like, what is she doing? So yeah, not happy there, or Magnus isn't happy there and is suspicious of Francesca. Alexander is working on closing out the nuclear power plant. I'm not sure when we learned this, but he was burying radioactive waste in the concrete, so that's something that happened. Good job, Alexander. Alexander, I don't think he's a nice lover and supporter of his wife, Regina, but he's definitely not a good dude. And we'll definitely find out more about his story later on in the season. And we have the new investigator, Clausen, who actually was one of my favorite characters throughout the season, just because he was like very holding people accountable. In this first episode, we meet him. He's kind of thrown into things, but he's very harsh to people. He doesn't take their word. He's always questioning things, which I like out of a police officer. Like, he doesn't have bias. He's coming from an outside source. So I like Clausen's little arc throughout this season, and I like this introduction to him. And then the final thing of the episode is Jonas in 2052. He finally heads inside this sort of compound where it seems like there's this portal thing that's like, it's weird to describe. It's like a blue ball with matter going around it, and it looks like some sort of portal. It's like twisting in the air. So that was the big thing that Elizabeth and the group said, no, you're not allowed to go into that compound. You're not allowed to go see that thing. But of course, Jonas, being the person he is, gets in there and sees that thing. So that's how we live off episode 1. So as always, I'll pick a favorite and least favorite character from each episode. Favorite character from episode 1 is Jonas. He eventually does come back for Hannah, which I respect. Him trying to do shit in the future, I respect as well. Kind of introductory first episode again, throwing us back into it. So that's what I got for him for my favorite. Least favorite is Bartosz. He's just an idiot, and at least Noah is like somewhat brainwashed, but Bartosz is just like seemingly bad and also just an idiot. So that'll wrap up episode 1. Episode 2 is titled Dark Matter. So we start this episode out with Claudia. She has some audio on the dark matter thing that we left off in episode 1 with, that Jonas is looking at in 2052. And she sort of mentions it's some sort of time machine, and we will get further clarity on what this machine actually is. But for now, it's kind of a creepy portal that just like, I don't like the way it twists. Like it gives bad vibes, you know. And the way it's created, the finale, man. I'm just gonna keep talking about the finale throughout the whole podcast. No, but I mean, it's a time machine because of course it is, right? So Egon in 19 I if people actually watch these videos, they probably think I have the worst pronunciation. Egon, I don't know I'm gonna call him Egon. Egon wants to tell Claudia something in 1987, but he does not actually end up going through and telling her. Claudia and Egon, man, that's just a sad, sad tale. Just never could get on the same page. Seemingly, it wouldn't have worked, just the way it ended, but it's a sad tale of a father and daughter, really. Um, Nonetheless, we have Mikkel in 1987. He's still trying to adjust to everything, being thrown in from 2019 into 1987. It's really hard. I mean, he's been there a couple months, but it's not going to go great at the beginning. So we had that confrontation, or we had the suspicion from Magnus last episode on Francesca of, her doing something suspicious while dropping off stuff for the prostitute on the old train tracks. So Magnus, good for him. He's just like open about his stalking her. But he accuses her of being a prostitute herself, which is really interesting for a high school, probably 17 or 18-year-old to be a prostitute herself. It's like, is she though? Like, come on, dude. I don't know if people like Magnus, but he's kind of just like, like the stalking stuff's cringy, and he's kind of just boring. Like, it's interesting that they made him, what he is at the end of the season, but it's like, I don't know. I don't think I'm the biggest Magnus fan. Nonetheless, Francesca is going to give her explanation on what she's actually doing. So, she is the one of all the people in this fucking town who provides the prostitute hormone therapy pills. Maybe I shouldn't have been that harsh on it. It is. I don't know what Germany is like. I don't know if Germany's progressive, if they're anti-transgender, because I don't know if the prostitute's transgender. That's what I'm just assuming. If they're not, I'm sorry, but prostitute seems like she's going through a sex change. Obviously, if she's getting hormone therapy pills, I think it's pretty safe to assume she is a transgender man who switched to a woman. But if I'm wrong on that, please feel free to leave it below in the comments. But maybe there's not a lot of people in this town. This town does seem pretty somewhat old-fashioned. Maybe there aren't people who are able to give her those pills or want to give her those pills. Maybe that makes sense with Francesca's dad being a therapist as well. Maybe she has some sort of connection there. So, the more I talk through that one, the more it actually makes sense. And, Francesca seems like a nice spirit. Just trying to help people out. So that's good. Forget what I said earlier. Good for Francesca. We have the old version of Claudia. This is present day Claudia, 2019, 2020 Claudia. She visits 1987 Claudia, and she says there was something else, which I think poor 1987 Claudia just gets like everything thrown on her this season, like has no chance to really prepare, where, Jonas has been on a journey through a year. Noah's been around since fucking 1921. Like, these people have all had a decent bit of time to acclimate to what's going on. 1987 Claudia is just like, they're just like, fuck it, here you go, you're gonna handle everything, So that's the first interaction between those two. Jonas, in 2052, he's going to pull a trap on some of the militia-style men, playing some Elvis from the top of the tower, which I thought was respectable. They're roaming around in the future just looking for people to fuck up, I guess, because that's what happens in apocalyptic worlds. So he's playing that Elvis song, and then he takes some of their gas in order for something he's going to use or need to use later. So I like that little heist by Jonas, the couple of seconds of like he's going to get caught. Obviously he wasn't going to get caught, but good little scheme there by him. So Regina, back in the present day, is being interviewed by Charlotte and Clausen, and she forks over future Jonas's things. This is stranger Jonas, who just seemingly left a lot of shit in the hotel room. I'm not sure if that was on purpose for Regina to find, or he just accidentally left it there. I feel like he's too careful to accidentally leave. Well, he's kind of messy sometimes too, so maybe it's like he maybe actually forgot about that. But it's like if you're checking into a hotel room and you're like, I'm gonna be back, and you just never come back, or you just leave, it's like they're gonna have to clean it out. So maybe he knew that Regina would eventually find it. Um, but Regina hands this stuff over to the police, which tweaks out Charlotte, and this is basically the end of Charlotte and Clawson working together because Charlotte's kind of on her own side quest throughout the rest of the season. Like puts in sick, nonetheless. At this point, I thought that the detective might be working with Noah because he's kind of suspicious of Charlotte. He saw the picture of Noah on her desk earlier, so it's like maybe he's the hired help, the inside help for Noah. But I think that was just a bad theory by me. Nonetheless, we have 1987 Mikkel. He's sticking around the caves. I think he kind of got hit once at school and then just walked to the caves. He's like, fuck, I'm going back to 2019, or tried to. And he runs into Noah outside of the caves. Not really much of an interaction there, but Noah's just like, hey. And Mikkel is like, I can't do anything. Poor Mikkel, man. We'll get to this. We'll get to a really sad Mikkel/Michael episode. Also in 1987, Egan talks to Helge, and Helge is, kind of panicked about the situation. We know Egan wrote in his notebook, why not the state road, or why not the, whatever the country road or whatever. I forget the specific word. I'm sorry. But he's always been kind of suspicious that Helge had some involvement in the disappearance of Mads Nielsen. So he finally gets around to it after he retired, and Helge is, in my words, tweaking out about 1957 Ulrich when Egan brings this up to him. This doesn't go well with Helge, and this kind of makes him like panicked. He's all up in arms. So that's something that, say we will about Egan. Season 1 he's kind of incompetent. Season 2 he's somewhat incompetent as well. But at the end of his life, he was really starting to get shit together. And he's starting to actually be a detective, so that was good for him. But too little, too late, my friend. So we have the old version of Claudia. She mentions stopping Adam, and the current Regina, or the current Claudia, she says she'll understand soon, and she mentions also that she will not have much time with Regina, and Regina will live. So interesting that we don't really know Regina's future heading into season 3. I think that's one of the more interesting aspects of the finale, is Regina being, part of that group. We'll get to it when we get to it, but she was right. Everything these future time people know is just right. So that leads on to my theory that I said at the beginning of the video. There's just one solid timeline. It's like none of this shit's gonna change. I don't think anything's changing. It's just like this is what the actual timeline is, and we're just watching it play out. But I could be wrong on that. Jonas is caught sneaking into where he's not supposed to be and is put up on the hanging machine, is what I put. I don't know what's it, like the dockets or something. I forget what the specific word for that is when you're about to be hung. And he's shot in the leg while he's up there for saying, put me down, I gotta go back to the future, I gotta get out of here. And then future Elizabeth, no remorse, no sympathy, nothing, kicks out the stool from under him, but then shoots the rope, saving him. So nice shot there, dead shot from her. This saves Jonas for the moment, but he does have a noticeable, we kind of saw it in the Stranger Jonas through season 1, that little marking around his neck. So that's a good indicator of like when he pre-Jonas and post-Jonas, the mark around his neck. So we know now where that's from, where he was almost hung. So he's saved in 2052 by future Elizabeth. She must know the importance of him in some capacity, or know who he is and what he is able to do or something. That's my guess. Egan is now in 1987. He visits Ulrich in the psychiatric facility. Obviously, Ulrich was arrested in 1953 for the murder of Yasin and Eric. Even though he had nothing to do with that, he just showed up at the wrong time, started, causing too much trouble. Ulrich's basically just been rotting all this time. We don't really see what he was doing from 1953 until 1987, but he's older now. We can kind of imagine he's just been stuck in the cell. He doesn't talk much, according to the police. It's a tough life. And Ulrich kind of taunts about Egan's death to his face. He's like, you don't have much time left. I'm from the future. And at this point in the season, in this point of the season, Egan doesn't really have much to rebut with. He's like, okay. But I think this kind of does do something in Egan to get the wheels turning. Like, maybe this is actually true. Maybe there is more to the story, Yeah. So Mikkel obviously had a rough time at school. A nice moment here where Enos greets him after he comes home from not going to school. You know, we don't get a lot of Enos this season, but she clearly was a nice parent to Mikkel, helped raise him to be Michael. Took him in when she didn't have to, so that was nice of Enos. I like Enos. Actually, she has a suspicious action later on, which we'll get to, but her and Mikkel, she's Mikkel's de facto mother at this point, and that was a nice little touching moment and show that just is like crazy. Jonas is locked in a cage. Went against the actions of the people in 2052, went against Elizabeth, went against leadership, etc. So obviously he's got to be detained for that. He does get freed by the girl who's second in command there after she wonders also why Elizabeth didn't let him be killed at the hanging, because her shooting her free, or her shooting Jonas free, means that he's important in some way, which I said as well. Good call by her. So she lets him out to see like, what'd you find? What were you doing? If you're that important, she would have killed you. So I'm gonna let you out, and we'll see what happens. Old Claudia hides the machine in 1953, while the 86 Claudia digs it up in that same spot. So nice little choreography by both of them to have that figured out there, where the machine was just buried for 33 years. And Claudia in 86 now has it, and she'll definitely swing that thing around throughout the season. Jonas and the girl go back to the portal thing, and Jonas is like, there's no way for me to get back here. Obviously the passage was quote unquote closed in season 1 by the stranger Jonas, so there's no cave time machine anymore. He just walks into the portal thing. He's like, fuck it, I don't want to live here in 2052 because everyone I know is dead and I got people to save. So we'll see where Jonas ends up. And then one storyline I did miss taking notes on. I did write an extra note at the end. I missed the storyline of Charlotte. She doesn't know who her parents are, and her potentially being related to the clock guy. So Tannenhouse is the clock guy, and he was like a grandfather to her apparently, but he wasn't actually related to her. So we really know that we still are kind of unclear on the upbringing of Charlotte. We know who her parents are, which we'll definitely get into in the last episode of the season. But this is kind of a side plot of Charlotte trying to figure out who her parents are, and we know she has some sort of relationship to Tannenhouse. So my favorite of this episode, once again, is going to Jonas, bee sting, surviving, being hung and shit, and entering the portal, saying fuck it. I like that energy from Jonas. Least favorite, going to Magnus, the stalking bro, stalking Francesca, and weird, or it just was weird. Please stop stalking her. And I don't know, I think he will, but maybe not. So that'll wrap up episode 2. Episode 3 is titled Ghosts, and we start this episode out with Noah, the old version of Noah, putting 1953 Helge into the machine, saying what is known to be the classic Helge phrase of tick-tock. Time, as always, is a very important construct in this show. Noah tells Helge, God and time have chosen him. Now, this is really interesting because looking back on the history of the machine, only a couple people have survived the machine. Jonas survived the machine by reaching out and entering through a portal in season 1, I believe. Helge seemingly has this strapped onto his head, and he's able to get out of this alive. So obviously we saw Eric did not make it, Yassine did not make it, Mads did not make it. So really interesting on who actually makes it out of the machine and what the machine does. We're still kind of unclear, as we are on a lot of things during the show, but Noah and Helge, that team up started early. As time went on, as we get to like 86, Helge is not so high on it, but that's our intro to the episode. Moving along, we have this budding relationship. I might have mentioned it in the season 1 review, but there's this little thing in 1953 between Agnes, who is Noah's sister, and Doris, who is the mother of Claudia and the wife of Egan. So essentially she's just in the show to have this affair with Agnes. So especially in 1953, I'm not sure how things were in Germany, considering that's right before World War II. I'm not sure they'd be super high on two women getting together romantically, so that was interesting to see that play out. And I do see this sort of magical, I don't know if I want to say magical, but there's some sort of aura about Agnes that just makes people around her like her. So I'm interested to see where Agnes falls into all this story. It's crazy to think there's only 8 episodes left of the show. Like, there's so many questions left to answer, but if you cut it off at an early season, you're gonna have a good ending, because most shows go on too long. So Claudia may have also seen this going on. Seems like this is a common theme throughout the town, is kids just knowing their parents are cheating or that something's going wrong in their marriage. I guess it's not too hard to figure out, but Claudia may have seen Agnes and Doris, eating each other out, doing some sexual stuff. So keep that one on the back burner for now. And speaking of young Claudia, she's walking around with Tronte in the woods, and one of the scenes that still is so confusing to me, she's with Tronte, and Tronte just drops his pants in front of her. They're like 9 at the time. I had no idea what this means. Please, someone leave this below. Like, this scene was never even addressed. It just a throwaway scene. I have no idea what this scene was supposed to mean. It's really, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest. So back in 86, Helge has a bit of a crash out when Claudia asks him about the book that he gave to her, The Journey Through Time. And he says to never trust Noah. So like I said, he was put into the machine by Noah in 1953. 33 years later, he's not having that. He says not to trust Noah. Obviously, Noah and Claudia will end up on the opposite spectrums of this sort of pseudo war through time. And yeah, 86 Helge, this guy just seems like a tortured soul, really. I don't know what we could do to help him. Agnes and Noah are officially established as siblings. Once again, it's hard to keep track of what we actually know and what we don't know. So I'm sure it might have been alluded to or mentioned before, but that's a fact now. Agnes and Noah are siblings. And the present version of Claudia gives a newspaper clipping to Agnes to give to herself or something. This will come up again later, but this is a little bit confusing when it did happen originally. Meanwhile, in 86, the old version of Ulrich tells Egon about who he is and how he came from the future. I feel like Ulrich was trying to tell him that at the beginning, but, Egon's story is a tragic one because he's slowly just learning more and more, but as he learns more, he just gets closer to his fate of dying. So that sucks, but it's good to see Egon start to clue pieces together, as that's kind of his arc throughout this season. 86 Claudia gets the explanation from Tannenhaus on how the machine works, and her future self, her present self from 2019, came to tell Tannenhaus how the machine worked and to tell her how to do it. Tannenhaus has to be like the most crazy character in this whole thing. Like, he just works in a shop, and then you have people from the future, people from the past just walking into a shop telling him what to do, how to make these machines. So that's got to be crazy for him. I don't know how he does it. It's just like that would break my world. I don't even know how you exist when you're just like chilling in the shop. All of a sudden someone comes from fucking 2019 with a phone. Crazy, bro. Nonetheless, we also have Noah in 53 goes back to Helge's house, visiting home. Helge hasn't spoken to anybody since he got out of the machine, seemingly hasn't done anything. He's been kind of a shell of himself. But as soon as Noah gets into the building, Helge immediately hugs him, and Noah calls him a miracle to his mother. I think the father died. I think Helge's father died throughout this, maybe in between seasons or something. I don't remember on screen him dying, but maybe it was kind of just an off screen comment. But yeah, something weird's happening between Helge and Noah. I mean, it's pretty easy to see that is transpiring, and it goes bad because by 86 they're not really, or Helge is like tweaking out when he's mentioned and says not to trust him. 86 Egon is doing more detective work about the Ulrichs and Michael case, asking Ines questions about Michael and who he is, where he's from. I don't know if Ulrich ever specifically mentioned Mikkel or Michael to him, but he's doing his due diligence, which is good detective work because no one really knows about this besides, even Ines doesn't really know what's going on in the situation. She just knows that he's like maybe from the future, maybe an Oracle vision. That's what she's mentioned in season 1, I remember. So Egon really started to put shit together once again. Just, we've been over that a couple times. Agnes offers the last pages of the book. So this was like her mission from Noah was to get these, or her mission from Claudia was to like fake Noah out by getting these book pages or something. So Agnes offers these last pages of that book that Claudia wrote that we don't really know what it says, in order for Noah to put in a good word with Adam with her. Apparently she's been, kind of kicked out of the Traveler group and needs to get that good word in with Adam again. Meanwhile, time traveler Claudia comes back to apologize to Egon in 53, so the oldest version of Claudia, the present day. I feel like Claudia is, Noah's just kind of doing this like linear thing of being like, I'm just gonna like go through time and to figure out how to screw with kids' heads and stuff, and like it's pretty like open and like not honest, but it's kind of obvious what he's doing. Claudia, I don't know. Claudia's on a freaking side quest, man. But she comes back to 53 to apologize to the youngest version of Egan for what's going to happen to him. And then in 86, in present day, he tells her about his cancer. So that was a sad scene. Obviously, they're kind of estranged. I think, no, I think Claudia is just trying to stay on a different time. Like, it's a little confusing, but I think Claudia is just trying to stay in a different timeline. And then, I don't know. It's hard to decipher what's really going on with Claudia. Egan shows 86 Ulrich, the old version of Ulrich, a picture of Mikkel, which causes him to obviously rage and crash out on Egan. Mikkel is still alive, and in 1986, that makes him happy, but also makes him upset because he could have been seeing him this whole time. He asks him where he is, and did he know that the whole time that he was there? Obviously, Egan is kind of just trying to put shit together, not really knowing these things going in. And then when he does bring him up, it obviously offends Ulrich. So that was a bad crash out from Ulrich. It's sad to watch Ulrich in this season just be like an old man rotting, never going to see his kids again. Well, he does see his kids again, but it's sad. It's sad to see Ulrich, and valid crash out, in my opinion. The present version of Claudia, the old woman, visits Tannhaus and shows him the book, mentioning that he will make the machine and show her how to use it in the future. So this version of Claudia comes now to tell Tannhaus this, and then eventually we'll see 86 go to Tannhaus and be like, your future version came to show me this. So it's a full circle moment that we'll get to in a bit. But Helge prays, and his mother's watching over him. As we got onto this season, I noticed there's this little trend where they do like a montage. So I tried to take down what was notable from the montage of the episode. But I do like this little montage, and then they do give you like 2 or 3 more important scenes. But it's good to like remember what's going on with everybody if you looked away for a second, because you can't look away for 1 second. I didn't, but if you did, So, where was I? Helge prays, and his mother watches over him. Obviously, a little bit concerned. He didn't speak, and then all of a sudden was talking when Noah came in. Egan sees his wife and Agnes being close together. Older Ulrich looks at the picture of Mikkel. 86 Claudia uses the machine. Nothing really too, impactful. It's all kind of world building stuff there. So in the present day, we have a very important confrontation between Claudia and Noah, so the oldest version of each character in the present day, going through all they've gone through. And Noah feels manipulated by Claudia, which is weird because we never see Noah and Claudia necessarily interact that closely. And she says Adam is using Noah, which I think is made very apparent by the end of the season. And Noah considers this, maybe that's a good idea. Nope. Blast her with the shotgun. So Claudia, her timeline has closed in this year in 2020 or wherever they are. So this version of Claudia, we know where she dies. So that's at least something we have to help us figure out the rest of this mess. Anyways, Agnes has the article of... So remember that article clipping I mentioned earlier? It is unidentified woman's body found in the woods. So this was the piece that Claudia gave her earlier. It's about her own death. So now she knows that that's Claudia, has that information, and then she gives the pages to Noah. He reads the pages he wanted to get and says something about Charlotte and how this can't be true. And then Adam asks him, did you get the pages? He lies and says he does not have the pages. So Charlotte, interesting, add to this story, which we'll definitely get to it later on, as I mentioned a couple of times now. But we finish off this episode with 86 Claudia traveling back to 2019 and sees Regina struggling with cancer and starts crying because that was a tough one to end the episode on. Obviously, her daughter, a couple years down the line, will have cancer and be struggling, so that's always tough to see for a mother. So favorite from this episode is going to Egan. Bro finally started listening, good for him. Piecing things together might help Ulrich to see his son one last time. Least favorite is Noah, very conflicting about what is actually going on, but just feels like Noah does not have good intentions and seems to be manipulating at least Helge in this situation. So that'll wrap up episode 3. Episode 4 is titled The Travelers. We start this one out with a cliffhanger we had from a couple episodes ago of where the fuck did Jonas go after being entered into that little portal of something. And we find out he was transported somewhere after going to that machine. Where is it? Looks to be an old year that he is in now. We see a childhood Agnes, and they speak of World War I in the background. Yep, this is 1921. Count them up. So we have 2019, 1986, 1953, 2052, and now we have 1921. So a fifth timeline. Sneak that one in there for you. So Jonas is trapped in 1921. Martha is dreaming and has this dream that I feel like opens or is part of the opening of like a couple episodes where her and Jonas are, having sex together, and he says, "You and I are perfect for each other. Never let anyone tell you differently." And she wakes up sweating. So I think Jonas had that dream before. He's going to have it again. It's just, I don't know. I guess this is just the fate of dreams, right? I don't know. Or maybe they're destined by fate and there is a God and there is an important power out there. I don't know. Noah meets Jonas for the first time in 1921, the young version of Noah. Noah says, "I pictured you differently." So this version of Noah, which is interesting, the 1921 version has seen him somewhere else or heard about him somehow, which we do see later on that he has been speaking with his older self. So maybe that's where he got it from. Yeah, I mean, seems like like I always said, the big three players in all this are Jonas, Claudia, and Noah, like kind of playing at odds here, and you can kind of throw Adam into that team with Noah as well. So the group of the travelers, like I'm sure it's gonna be explained to us. Probably not, but maybe. I don't know. Still a lot to get to. I just don't know how 1921 Noah like pictured him. I don't know. You just have to keep going with this stuff. Meanwhile, 86 Claudia is looking at the plant, looking for herself in 2019. Obviously, she thinks maybe I stayed at the plant, had a good career. She's very surprised to see that Alexander has taken over the plant and is now the person running things over there. Yeah, I mean, we see her let Alexander into her office, let him take a job, but all of a sudden he's elevated himself to the running the plant. That is pretty impressive about Alexander. I actually wonder how that did actually happen. And I'm not sure we'll ever get answers on that because he's dead. But yeah, poor Claudia, lost her job. And something I didn't realize that is like occurring throughout the season is Claudia just disappears after 86. Like she's gone for a while. We see it in her interaction with Regina. And she doesn't return to 86. Her 86 version is running around the place. Or running around all over the place. So that makes somewhat sense. But she will return to 1986 later in the season. Meanwhile, my favorite character, Hannah, invites Charlotte over for older Jonas to tell her about everything. So this is stranger version of Jonas. And he says about Noah and the gang. Obviously, Charlotte's been holding on to this picture of Noah for a while. He says they are the travelers, and if you look closely at this picture that Charlotte has, you can see a couple others like Easter eggs for later on what will happen in the season. We'll get to that when we get to it. But good to see Charlotte's being passionate on everything because I, mentioned before, she kind of just isn't a police officer for most of this episode, but she does have the police background, so maybe she'll help figure something out. Or she'll just be in awe this whole season and not really know what to do. But I like Charlotte, so I'm glad to see her being informed on things going around. So 86 Claudia is now in 2019, and she has to figure out how to use a tablet at the library, which is a funny scene. There is some adjustment for people time traveling, and she finds that she did disappear back in the day, and she probably won't go back from where she is now. She's interested in Alexander and Regina getting married, and her father, obviously Egan, is going to die in 1987, so she's trying to figure out how that happened. And yeah, I mean, it's tough for her to. I feel like it's tough to go to the future. Like going to the past is fine because it's like it's gonna happen, but going to the future and finding out all this stuff, it's like I hate like it's that classic debate of would you want to know the day you die. Like I feel like I wouldn't want to know that, but everyone's different. So yeah, Claudia, she doesn't know when she she dies, just her father. So Peter and Charlotte are doing some detective work. So this is actually interesting change from season 1 where Peter and Charlotte are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum, at odds, don't really like each other, have a bad marriage. Now they're actually working together to put together clues and figure out what's actually going on. So they do have a lot of these clues lined up, and they inform future Jonas and Hannah about what's happening in the town. So they kind of connect. So I like this power team of Charlotte, future Jonas, Peter, and then Hannah's there also. Katharina is also looped into this group and doesn't believe most of what is going on when they do tell her all this information. I don't know. Katharina, like, her stock is falling, man. She had questionable actions in season one, in my opinion, and then we get to season two, and it's just like, meh. Like, she's, I get it. She lost her son, she lost her husband, but it's like, lady, and she is gonna have her own arc in season three, probably, trying to figure something out. So I don't know, but I don't know. I wasn't really a fan of Katharina this season. And she's very rude. Obviously, Hannah, they don't have the best relationship, but she keeps going back to Hannah's house. So go to freaking Charlotte's house, not Hannah's house. So there's another group forming, the group of Martha, Magnus, Elizabeth, and Francesca. They are roaming around the cave. They're tired of sitting on their hands too. They want to find where Mikhail is. Well, not really, because Elizabeth doesn't like Mikhail. Anyways, they find Bartosz while looking around in the cave. Not the most pleasant interaction, especially since Bartosz is carrying the time travel machine, which we'll get to in a second. So Jonas tries to use the usual trail in 1921, the portal. Obviously, we saw a stranger version of Jonas shut that down anyway, and in 1921 it wasn't even built. We actually opened the season with Jonas and that other person trying to build the hole to be able to time travel in the cave. So we know it's not there. Jonas now sees it's not there as well. Hasn't been built yet, so that's tough luck for him. He's going to have to figure out a different way to get out of this year, 1921. So with Bartosz, he does have the travel time machine, and the kids are just like, we're taking this and we're going to leave you here in the cave tied up, which is actually pretty fucked up because they leave him there for like seemingly a couple of days. And Francesca, maybe we'll get to it. I don't know if I recorded this, but Francesca gets a little spicy with Bartosz. I don't know. I don't feel bad for Bartosz though. He's kind of just like, he gives like douche vibes, And I was actually surprised to see he's being seemingly brought into season 3, and one of the people that survives the apocalypse. But I guess we'll see what happens with Bartosz down the line. Wooler and Clausen almost run into 1986 Claudia on the road, and these scenes are just hilarious when it's like people from the past or the future are just in town, and there's like obvious people like police officers are just driving around town and they don't even like realize that they're there. So that was interesting to see 86 Claudia, just like everyone, the people who time travel are always frazzled on this like same road outside of the caves. And so 86 Claudia joins that group, and Wooler and Clausen don't even bat an eye, they just almost run to her, keep driving. So Katharina realizes finally that what she was told by Hannah and the crew is true after finding the class photos of Mikhail in 86. Obviously this hits her like a brick, like, fuck, my kid did grow up in 1986. I mean, it's crazy to say. And then Michael, it's tragic. I mean, we learned most of this in season 1, but it's just hitting Katharina now because she just learned it. So I'll give her some grief there. Noah tells Jonas that the travelers and Sic Mundas are waiting for him. The portal isn't open yet, obviously, as we just saw. So Noah brings him to the church, where older Noah is, the present version of Noah, and tells him he will have the answers he's looking for in time. And I'll speak for the viewers, we will not have any answers in time. Hopefully we will by the end of this season, or end of this show, but I doubt it. I keep saying that. I'm worried. Anyways, the other girl from 2053 that helped Jonas go into that portal thing, as soon as she walks out of the room, she's met by 2053 version of Elizabeth, who says the portal used by Jonas is part of the devil, which is an interesting term to use, especially considering what we saw in the finale. Part of the devil. I think I disagree with that, just from my experience looking at this machine through this season, but I could be wrong on that. It doesn't seem like it's causing that too much harm. I think it actually causes more good than bad. People being able to time travel to where they want to, potentially. I don't know. It's interesting because, well, maybe it is part of the devil because it kind of causes the apocalypse. So maybe Elizabeth is right. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Wrapping up the episode, we have this interaction. We finally really sit down and meet who Adam really is. So Noah says Adam will send Jonas on his way, the path determined for him. And I think maybe a bigger theme of the show that we haven't really been talking about is fate. Is all this just fated to happen? And, that was kind of my analysis of the situation. As I mentioned in the jump, like everything's just kind of happening linearly, and it's like, oh, we can maybe change this thing, but you thinking you're changing something is actually just the original timeline. So maybe this is like a very big fate, everything is fate storyline, and maybe it's not, but I feel like that is what it is. It's just like fate, not even fate, but it's like what's going to happen is going to happen. And if you try and change it, guess what? That's what already happened. And you don't have, it's like the illusion of free choice type thing. So there's a little theme deep dive for you, just based off Noah saying that one thing to Jonas. Nonetheless, we get the big reveal at the end of episode 4. We find out who Adam really is. It's Jonas in the future. Pulls down the little suit coat, and we see the scar that Jonas has from almost being hung in 2052. Crazy reveal. I don't even know I don't even know how to assess this. And the stranger Jonas knows he's gonna turn into Adam because he's been in Jonas's feet before, and Jonas now knows that he's gonna become Adam. So how does Adam exist? And this question will have to be answered in season 3 because I'm sure this will be one of the main questions they do address. But I don't how does he still get to be Adam? It's like we see 2 versions of Jonas that are clearly kind of anti-Adam. So how does he eventually, build this up to actually be Adam, especially Stranger Jonas, because we see what happens at the end of the season to younger Jonas, and it's like, okay, maybe he's this pain to blah, 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 but it's like, how could his face get so deformed too? I like Jonas. I don't like Adam. I don't want him to be Adam. Oh! That was my reaction to that. I don't know. I don't even know how to address it. It's like, of course he is. So we'll have to see what happens with Adam and Jonas down the line. So we have 3 versions of Jonas. We have the present day, Stranger Jonas, Adam. Crazy. Why did he change his name then? Just to throw people off? I don't know. Maybe Adam isn't truly, maybe it was just a trick and he can he did a little cut. I don't know. I hope not. Or I hope it's true, but favorite from episode 4 is going to Clausen. Kind of a random one here. I don't even think I really talked about Clausen that much this episode. But I just love Clausen's interaction with all the characters, cooking with fire. Hopefully find some of the answers that we are looking for. I just like his character overall. Least favorite, kind of alluded to it before, is Katharina. Being in denial, I get it. It's just like the way she was going about it, I didn't really appreciate. Being sort of rude, and also not really, kind of crazy to say, but throughout these episodes, it's not really like a person you can be like, that's my least favorite. Noah was for a while, but we kind of learned a little bit more about him, and he's not being that negative this season. So Katharina gets my least favorite for episode 4, and that's where we will wrap up this episode. Episode 5 is titled Lost and Found. So we start this episode out with the stranger version of Jonas having the dream about him and Martha having sex. And then this one ends a little bit differently, where something black comes out of Martha's body and sort of corrupts her body in a sense. So he wakes up sweating after that. And then he walks out of the house, leaving Hannah there in the present day. So that was something that happened. I don't know. Are we done with this dream? I don't know what this dream means, but Martha and Magnus reject the opportunity to find out what happened to Mikkel through Katharina, I believe, where Katharina just learned last episode about what actually happened to Mikkel, what maybe happened to Ulrich, and it's tough because Katharina's been going to the caves every day, kind of not in the house at all. So when she goes to talk to her kids who she hasn't given a shit about in like a couple months, and it's like, hey, I found out what happened, and they're like, you haven't been here, we're not going to listen. So Magnus will definitely find out later on, and looks like Martha will too. But yeah, that was tough for them. Kind of one of those situations that makes sense, but it's just tough to see because they could have learned what happened to their brother. Nonetheless, Ulrich has been scheming up a plan to escape out of the mental facility. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but his present version in 1986 is in the mental facility, aged there 33 years after being framed for the murder of Eric and Yasin in 1953. So finally, after seeing the picture of Mikkel, he's inspired to get out of this place, so he's able to pull a couple tricks, gets out of the facility after knocking out his guard and taking the key card. Don't love the not changing out of the white suit. Makes you look like you're in a mental institution. Maybe you should have taken that off, but I guess he just thought it was kind of always the case that he'd be caught anyways, or that he was going to escape. So I don't know, but I thought maybe you should switch the wardrobe there, Ulrich, next time. So 86 Claudia is trying to convince Egan to live with her family after seeing his inevitable death in 87 last episode, and she read about it in the papers, so she's trying to, keep a close eye over him at her house, so when the day does come, she can kind of prevent it. But, another tragic tale of what I mentioned before, of what you trying to change to the past, you're just causing the future, and we'll get to a very sad scene in the coming episodes. Older Jonas breaks into Martha's house. The stranger. This is where we see Jonas kind of turn into a little bit of a creep, where he is very much older now, breaking into a 17 or 18-year-old Martha's house and sitting in her bed. The medallion thing that they seemingly have some sort of connection over is there, which, it's been mentioned before. It seems important. We do learn the origins of this medallion, but it's here. It's on Martha's bed that the stranger Jonas version leaves there for her. So very kind of creepy scene, especially considering we know that now that Jonas and Martha are related, and Martha is his aunt, but that doesn't seem to stop anybody, especially the older version of Jonas, which is just absurd. But nonetheless, we continue on. Clausen is continuing his investigation, and he clocks Hannah, figures out she's got some sus shit going on with Alexander. Most of his investigation seems to be focusing around Alexander as this season takes shape, which makes sense with what we learn in the either second to last or last episode of the season. But he figures out that Alexander is still paying her for her services. I guess she was like a masseuse. So why would you keep paying for massages if you're not getting massages? Obviously, I think we saw Hannah give Alexander a massage in season 1, but they're done because now she's just blackmailing him. And Clausen also picks up on the fact that she and Ulrich were sleeping together. So if he's able to pick that up in a couple days, doesn't seem like Katharina was aware at all. I don't know. It seems like most relationships in this town are just open or broken, and most people know about it except the people in them. So I don't know. I guess that's the theme throughout it. But Clausen does know that she has been sleeping with Ulrich. I guess maybe word got out after Katharina confronted her last season. I guess that's a possibility as well. So meanwhile, Bartos has been trapped in the cave. Like I mentioned before, Francesca's you have 3 days before you need liquid or nourishment, which was crazy considering she doesn't seem to be that harsh of a character. But Bartos is going to show them how to use the time machine, and they do seemingly time travel at the time of this scene. So we'll see later on where they end up or if it worked. Back in the present day, present day 1986, Claudia speaks with the old nuclear plant person to talk about the quote-unquote God particle. And this guy does not want to be associated with this particle, so that's something that could come up later. We don't really know what's going on with that. I have an idea, but I'm not sure if it's really that connected closely, so we'll have to find out about that. Continuing on, we finally get a reconnection between Mikkel and Ulrich, which I never thought we'd see on this show. So I was happy to see those two be able to talk, even if it was only for a couple of moments. Just a weird timeline where you have Ulrich, who was sent back to 1953, trapped in that timeline. Now in 1986 is an old man, meeting his son again. Mikkel sent back to 1986, but they are able to talk and seemingly are going to plan to do something to get out of here together. We'll see if it works. So another big bombshell on the villa, we have Noah revealed to be Charlotte's father. The fuck? We didn't know who Charlotte's parents were. We knew the Tanner house was somewhat involved. Wow. And just wait till we find out who the mother is. But Noah being her father, it's I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm still really trying to grasp how this comes together, but guess we'll find out. So Noah realizes he has to end Adam so that everyone lives, not just those in the bunker. So they always kind of prelude to the people ending up in the bunker this season, so this is kind of our first mention of it, but there will be a bunker of people that are saved from the apocalypse. Noah wants to save everyone from the apocalypse, not just the people who make it to the bunker. We get a little hint that I thought maybe was a red herring of the mother still being alive, but it doesn't say who it is. So, yeah. there's a mother out there. There certainly is a mother out there. Meanwhile, Bartos with other group tries to tell them what's going on. Noah obviously, or not obviously, but Noah had told them before that everything was what everything meant. What everything. Noah explained to Bartos things that would happen. They did end up happening. So he believes Noah, and then Bartos tries to share this knowledge with Martha, Magnus, Francesca, and Elizabeth, but they don't believe him because he's an unreliable narrator, which at this point I agree with them. It's mostly Martha who's like, I don't trust you. And this always begs the question of why did Martha get with Bartos in the first place? I'm not going to try and explain girls. I can't figure them out myself. So what advice am I going to give on this podcast? Meanwhile, Ulrich and Mikkel, they do try to escape to the caves. Just as they're about to enter the caves and potentially escape out of 1986, they are caught, and Ulrich is taken again back to custody, back to the psychiatric hospital. So super sad timing where Egan also was involved in knowing that's where they would go, even though he's retired. So kind of a bad move on Egan's part, separating son and father. So that sucked to see, just in all ways. Ulrich, while he's being arrested and in his custody, drives right by Magnus and Martha, his other two kids who just arrived by using the time machine for the first time in 2019, arriving in 1986. So right as they realize it's 1987, Ulrich is like banging on the car door. He's like, "That's my kids." It's like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar. It's just, poor Ulrich, man. This is a very tough episode for Ulrich fans out there. I do like Ulrich, but he does have his faults. But this was a tough episode to watch for sure. Got to see all three of his kids in the span of 15 seconds, and he's probably never going to see any of them again. At least this version of him that it grows to probably die soon in 1986. So super sad stuff. The older Jonas, stranger version, returns to the house and gets Hannah. If it wasn't bad enough that Clausen clocked her, her son's now going to clock her. He says to her, "You probably would have preferred Ulrich over Michael, wouldn't you?" She has no comment because it's fucking dead obvious she would. And she fucked a lot of things up. And spoiler alert for you, a stranger Jonas version, she's going to fuck more things up. I'm out on Hannah, bro. I'm done. Worse. People talk about Skylar White. Like, I think I said this in the season 1 review. Skylar White ain't shit. Hannah fucking sucks, bro. And I don't want to be anti-woman. There are men characters that I hate, just not in this show. I just hate Hannah so much. And maybe she'll have a redemption arc and everything will be cleared, but I doubt it. Hannah's awful. Ines is making hot coffee and seemingly slips some drugs in there. So she's just been, and she brings it up to Mikkel. So she's been giving him sleeping pills, is my hope. Because if you're drugging him with anything else, goddamn, you're already freaking drugging the kid. But it makes sense that you time travel if you can't sleep or something. I don't know, but we see her stealing sleeping pills when I think Egan arrives in her apartment to ask her questions. There's sleeping pills out there, and she's like, "Oh, I use these for fun." Ha ha. But there's a little something going on with Ines. I can't quite put my finger on it. But I don't trust her fully. There's not a lot of characters I do trust fully in this show. And she's definitely not one of those characters that I trust fully. Drugging the kid, really? He's 11 or 12 or 9, I forget, or 10. Okay. So ending out this episode, we have Adam. He reveals he has another one of those time portal machines, the void things that can take Jonas to whatever day he wants to. And he needs to go to end this from the beginning. And this is to prevent Mikkel/Michael from taking his own life. In that case scenario, Jonas will never be born, and everyone else will live out of the apocalypse, including Martha. And he goes in this portal to end out the episode. So my favorite character from this episode is Ulrich. Just an emotional journey, a sad journey, very empathetic to him. Just feels so awful for him. He had the chance to run it back with Mikkel, got to see Martha and Magnus, but is never going to probably spend another second with them. So super sad stuff there. Least favorite is going to Hannah. Got clocked twice in my estimation by Clausen and stranger version of Jonas, and seemingly just accepts her being a piece of shit in both case scenarios and doesn't apologize at all. What are you gonna do? So that wraps up episode 5. Episode 6 is titled An Endless Cycle and is one of my favorite episodes of this entire series so far. So let's dive right into it. We start this episode out with back in the present day, 2019. Or not Mikkel. Jonas wakes up, is home with Hannah and Mikkel, goes to take the rain jacket. He's going to go have a nice day on the lake. Michael sees this yellow rain jacket and starts tweaking out a little bit when Ulrich is brought up in the conversation by Hannah. And Jonas grabs that yellow rain jacket. So we see Michael being a little squirmy. And, I don't know. It feels like an episode with the fully flushed out Michael, like really added to the storyline. So I enjoyed that aspect of this episode for sure. Alexander in this timeline. Well, I don't know where I was going with that. Alexander is responsible for a murder potentially, and we see him in the pre-present day. This is like, remember the first day of the show is Mikkel hangs himself in like the first 10 minutes of the show. But a little bit before that is when this episode takes place. So it's kind of like that flashback episode of Prison Break where we learn why Michael got himself caught and, all this, like, this is that episode where it's like giving you a lot of context on stuff. So it adds a lot of world building and stuff. So we see Alexander reading this newspaper article about a potential murder, and he gets a little queasy, a little shaken up by that. So maybe there's something Alexander's involved in. We met him and he came in with a gun and passports. We didn't know who he was. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially in these last two episodes. And in other news, we also see the marital issues between Charlotte and Peter in their early form, or really in their peak form, because they're kind of on the same page nowadays. But there's this big party at Ulrich's house for Ulrich and Katharina's anniversary, I think, is the party. And yeah, Charlotte's going to go alone. Peter has been doing other stuff, which we'll get into in a bit, but clearly at odds here, where Charlotte is not fully trusting of Peter, and Peter's kind of frustrated by not being fully trusted. So we see those marital issues that were definitely brought up in season 1 play out here a little bit. So in other nudes, I don't know, I said nudes, I spoiled the point. At the lake, it's Magnus, Bartosz, Jonas, and Martha. So we see Magnus kind of sneak off to take a little piss, and he sees like a body dead in the water, laying there. And who is it but Francesca, I guess, just swimming naked in the lake. Once again, I don't know German culture. I don't know if that's commonplace for people to skinny dip, especially when it's sunny and bright out for everyone to see. He says, "I thought you were dead," and I guess that's their origin story of being attracted to each other. It's not just sharing weed in high school; it's seeing her naked swimming. And that's definitely not the last time he's gonna try and look at her, or it's just the beginning of his Joe Goldberg arc. So remember, now we have everything playing out normally, but Jonas has time traveled back to this specific time period. So we have the new Jonas, old present day. It's hard to explain, but this Jonas is the one who's been to 2052. We've been following throughout season 2. Most present day possible Jonas. He shows up and talks to Martha. As we saw, Martha was kind of trying to make moves on the other Jonas. Jonas is like, I gotta go help my grandmother with Legos or something. But now this real Jonas shows up, knowing that everything that happens a year later, basically, and he's not taking no fucking chances. So he starts spitting game to her, and he says the line, "You and I are perfect for each other. Never believe anything else." This while Magnus and Bartosz are swimming in the lake, because if Bartosz turned around and saw this, he'd be pissed. But they're flirting. They make out. So there's the origin story of Jonas and Martha. That version of Martha, it's so fucking confusing. The origin story to Martha, and then the older version of Jonas, slightly older version of Jonas. Now, the other version of Jonas, the regular version who's just living his life in this timeline, doesn't know about this, but he's going to have a surprise later on, which we'll get to. So it's an interesting dynamic there. I saw there was a nice TV time comment, which I'll address, even though I always say I'm going to do something and I don't, but when we get to that point. So those two make out. Good for them. Continuing on, we have Mikkel, Ulrich, and Katharina driving around. Ironically enough, Mikkel is super sick this day. He's got like monkeypox, basically chickenpox, one of those two. They have to stop by Michael's house for some reason. Michael and Hannah, I think, Hannah baked them something. So they're stopping by the house. Obviously, Hannah and Ulrich are banging at this point. So they like share flirty eyes, whatever. And Mikkel has to go to the bathroom. So he goes into Michael's house to use the bathroom. And we see Michael tweak once again with spooky music, listening to himself pee, which was really weird, but also like he knows he's going to see himself, I think, because the young version of Mikkel. Okay, so the young version of Mikkel wouldn't know, but he would remember that would happen. So it's like, that's always the weirdest part of me, is like, the weirdest part of the show to me is like, Mikkel as a kid in the like original timeline before he even disappeared doesn't know he's going to go back to 1986, right? Goes into the house, pees, and then comes out, is like, has this weird interaction with Michael, but then Michael is grown-up version of Mikkel who saw that play out when he was that kid. So how does the grown-up version of Michael still allow that to happen? That's, it feeds into my theory of just the one timeline. If you try and change shit, nothing's gonna happen. But I don't know. That just, it's mind bending. So the younger version sees him, and then the older version's hyperventilating. It's an awkward interaction. He kind of runs out of the house. I don't know, just maybe thought he was creepy. So the new version of Jonas makes his way back home. Obviously, just made out with Martha, so he's living the good life. No, but he's here to stop a mission. He's got to stop Michael from killing himself. Gives him a hug right off the bat, we see the relationship between Michael and Jonas. It's a nice relationship before. So they're able to lock in. He tells Michael everything he knows and comforts him. This was a very nice interaction between the two characters. He asks Michael not to kill himself, which he didn't even have the idea of killing himself until Jonas brought this to him, which is crazy because also it feeds right into my theory. The timeline is the timeline, and you trying to go back to change it actually just led to the timeline. Maybe like Adam's pushing this, I don't know. But Jonas shows him the letter of Mikkel explaining he's actually Michael, or Michael explaining he's actually Mikkel. So yeah, this is a tough scene to get through, and there's more to get to here. But while that's happening, everyone obviously is at this party for Ulrich, and Martha and Jonas end up alone in Martha's room, and that version of Jonas doesn't know that his future self made out to Martha and said that they're perfect for each other and never let anyone tell you anything else. And she's like, hey, what did you think, or what did you mean by what you said earlier? And they don't know, he doesn't know because he wasn't there. But eventually he's smart enough to just realize that they're going to be together, so they start making out as well. Now, the real intense stuff picks up back at Michael's house because this one, I still don't understand. This is one of my biggest questions heading into season 3. He says that Jonas actually was the one that took him to the caves when he disappeared as a kid. So a different version of him took him to the tunnel and cave because there was something scary out there. So there's an alternate version of Jonas that is running around and took Mikkel to the caves. Now, we do see him kind of hold up the yellow jacket over the neck, so maybe that is like a post something version of Jonas, which I'm assuming we'll see play out, where he has to go back and take Michael to the caves to do something. Because the current version of Jonas in that timeline didn't know that he did that. So we assume it's not actually him to do that. So pretty mind-breaking stuff there. But Michael is taking all this in from Jonas and is like, hey, I think you're actually here to show me what to do, and the letter, and let me write the letter and then make the future happen. So Adam just cooked Jonas into doing exactly what he wanted to. And Claudia's in this as well. I think there's like I think they're just trying to uphold the one secret timeline. But I think the timeline, I don't know. I think the timeline plays out no matter what. So it's like, I don't know. Poor Michael, he's doomed to fate just to kill himself. Sucks. So while all this is happening, very emotional moments, emotions are high. Who walks in? Fucking 2020, 2019 version of Claudia. And we learned that Adam lied to Jonas. Not surprising, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily true because we don't really know who to trust at this point between Adam and Claudia. And it's about everyone, and Michael has to make sacrifices too. Claudia's trying to talk him into doing it, so clearly Claudia has an interest in this timeline playing out, which it's gonna play out no matter what. But Jonas is kind of tentative, but then they kind of leave it on that, that he will have to end up killing himself and writing the letter. So meanwhile, we get our near end of episode montage. So we see Hannah and Ulrich make out while Katharina sleeps with Mikkel, trying to help Mikkel nurse himself back up to health. Obviously, Ulrich is being a scumbag. I'm not gonna like praise Ulrich all the time, but don't cheat on your wife. You know, this was shitty of him outside, and they're making out while Katharina's helping their kid recover. Peter knocks at the prostitute's door after their marital issues, and then Francesca was stalking him on the bike, so she sees the marital issues of Peter sleeping with the prostitute. Bartosz was supposed to go to the party, but he's having the dinner now with his family, Alexander and Regina. And while this is happening, Jonas and Martha are getting it on, so it's kind of awkward because we saw Bartosz kind of try and make an effort at Martha, and she rejected him. So Jonas goes with the older Claudia. The other version of Jonas, the present version of Jonas, goes with older Claudia as he and Michael are emotional. And Magnus is creeping once again on pictures of Francesca in gym class or something. And then Charlotte comes home to an empty house, besides maybe Elizabeth. So there's your little end of episode montage, kind of just reinforcing all the themes of the episode. Then to end this episode out, we have Michael unfortunately writing the letter. He was just fated to do it. So he has to write the letter and kill himself in a couple of days. And the big reveal at the end of this episode, which still throws me for a loop because we don't really know much about it, Magnus is a traveler. And two travelers talk to Adam and say they should have showed Jonas what his true role in all of this is. It looks like it's Francesca who's the other potential traveler, but this is crazy. Magnus is a traveler. What does it mean? How does it mean? How do we get here? I don't know. It's just... So he's part of Sic Creo Mundus Est. It's crazy, bro. And we'll learn more people that are involved in this shit. It's like, I don't know what's going on. So that's where we leave off episode 6. My favorite from this episode is Jonas. Both versions just kind of beasted. I don't know what Jonas's actual role in all this is, but he might be the deciding factor between Adam and Claudia. Hopefully he can somehow prevent Adam from winning. I don't know. I'm Team Claudia for now. Least favorite is Peter. I don't know. Maybe also another bad episode to choose somebody to be least favorite, but to have Francesca see you is pretty bad, and to cheat on the old wifey also, Charlotte seems like a nice woman. So least favorite going to Peter for episode 6. Episode 7 is titled The White Devil. So we start this episode out with 1953 Egan investigating the death of old Claudia. Obviously the present day version of Claudia, who had been time traveling back and forth. She was shot in the chest by Noah, seemingly in 1953 because Egan's there investigating it. Now, meanwhile, in the present day, the Bartosz crew is deciding whether or not to tell someone about the time machine. So that is Francesca, Elizabeth, Bartosz, Magnus, and Martha. Will they tell someone or will they not tell someone? Doesn't matter because Martha is upset with Bartosz for not sharing this information in the first place. Now, I like Martha, but I think this is a little bit hypocritical when Martha was basically shutting him out for weeks on end in season 1. Seemingly that trend continued in season 2. So when exactly was he supposed to share this information with you? You were kind of icing him out. I mean, I still don't like Bartosz either, but nonetheless, Helge calls Claudia the quote-unquote white devil, seemingly from inspiration from Noah. So I'm not sure which version of Helge this was. Probably the kid version of Helge, calling Claudia that, and says that she wants to kill everyone, apparently. So this is taken at face value because we don't really trust Noah or trust this version of Helge. But episode's called The White Devil. Maybe we'll get into why she is called the White Devil. Clausen, back in the present day, is still continuing his investigation, which I thought maybe he was going to come to some conclusions, but clearly he was only here for one reason. He has Alexander arrested for obstruction and identity theft, and this is proven by Alexander being 2 inches shorter than his documents, which I think is a pretty weak basis for an arrest, considering most men end up shrinking as they age, but, who am I to judge or say? Clausen gets the job done and gets Alexander arrested. Now, Martha, in the present day, barges into Jonas's house, and who's there to greet her but the stranger version of Jonas? So As I mentioned before, Jonas was creeping in her house. Now she walks right into his house. Wasn't happy to see this scene play out. But she realizes eventually that this actually is Jonas, doesn't believe him at first, and through the medallion and other stuff like that. So they're going to have some shit to figure out. But I was not happy to see this for Martha. Egon is still figuring shit out, and he's starting to put the pieces together about Helge and Mads somehow. So we knew that Helge was part of or partly responsible for the reason that Mads ends up dead in 1953. So Egon is finally starting to clue shit together, but we'll see where that ends up as well. So Hannah has arrived in 1953 to speak with Egon. She says she knows Ulrich. He might be her husband because her husband is missing for a while. They haven't heard, and no one came forward for Ulrich. So this is very interesting to Egon to give her the chance to talk to him, because they know nothing about this man really, because of course he's from the future. And of course, and when he asks her what her name is, of course, we don't even have to say it. She says her name is Katharina. Classic Hannah, of course. So Martha, in talking with the stranger version of Jonas, learns the truth about Mikkel/Michael, and that she is Jonas's aunt. And then Martha goes back home with this information and talks to Katharina and mentions the time machine that Magnus and the other group has that she left. So this is going to potentially inspire Katharina to do something later on, but Martha is now in the know as well about what's going on. So I like that all the characters are, up to speed, so we can just move on with the story instead of like trying to do the one-on-one like it's cool to see the one-on-one them all Katharina's reactions versus Martha's reactions, but let's move on with it. We got a timeline to solve. So this part a little confused me at first at the beginning. So Clausen had a brother named Alexander who went missing with the same exact last name as Alexander. Clausen tracked him all the way down to this town of Winden and got a tip that something in Winden might help you find your brother. At first I thought this Alexander was his brother, but he stole Alexander's identity, and now Clausen is here for him. So that was the whole switcheroo. It looks like Alexander maybe did something to Clausen's original brother Alexander, stole his identity, and is now here in Winden. So that could explain a lot about why Clausen's here and his motivations. He's not really here to solve this case. He's more here to just implicate Alexander, because it makes sense why he doesn't really care much about all the other stuff going on. He's mostly just focused in on Alexander. And so he is going to have his revenge potentially by arresting Alexander and indicting him on whatever he has done wrong. So Alexander, I mentioned before, I was never really a fan of his and always thought maybe something suspicious was going on with him. But yeah, this all just affirms that he basically did this. Meanwhile, Francesca back home is upset with Peter and Charlotte for their lies about the time travel. They don't really fill in the kids on what's going on. And then also she drops the bomb of Peter and Benny, who first episode I realized that the prostitute's name is Benny, so that's good to put a name to the face. Benny and Peter sleeping together. She obviously saw them. She drops that bomb. Took Charlotte aback a little bit, so I'm not sure if Charlotte even knew that was going on, which is crazy. So yeah, they're going to have to work through those issues if they persist as well. Kind of an L crash out. I don't know. Just feels like every time someone's like informed of what's going on, they kind of freak out a little bit too much. I mean, what would you do though? So I understand it. I probably would freak out as well. So back in 1953, Hannah is able to have her conversation with Ulrich. Ulrich asks her about Mikkel, Katharina, Magnus, and Martha. How are they doing? Are they doing okay? I think I need to get back to them. And of course, she doesn't really tell him what's going on and asks him to pick between her and Katharina. Lady, get it through your thick skull. Oh. But he responds, of course, and he says he loves her, and if she gets him out, he'll leave Katharina. And this isn't even good enough for her. She walks on him, leaving him to be trapped in the year 1953 forever. What did you want him to say? How could he possibly have, I don't know. Maybe he didn't do the best job of selling this, but it's like, dude, what was the point of this? Just to taunt in his face? It's like, oh my god, Hannah. Oh, I can't stand her. It's so tough. So she walks out on him in 1953. Meanwhile, Martha tells Magnus about Mikkel and Ulrich being alive. So now that whole family knows about knows what's going on. So that's good. That Magnus isn't left in the dark. Big clue here, or big not clue, but big sequence here. So Egan, in the present day of 1986, is clued in on Ulrich attempting to go to the caves and then becomes wise to Claudia being a time traveler now as well. This means a confrontation between the two where Claudia is yelling at Egan. He gives it back to her, and he says she has no heart, and all she has ever cared about was, and says all she's ever cared about is herself, which, in the grand scheme of things, it might be true from an outsider perspective. We still don't really know what her motivations are, but it seems like she's mostly self-interested. So he kind of did say some facts. And then, yeah, she gets upset, shoves him, and this results in his death. Seemed like kind of a weak way to go out, where he just like hit his head maybe, but he was old at the time, so that's it for Egan. Just like it always was, feeding into my theory, Egan always dies no matter what, because Claudia like hyperactively tried to change this a couple of times, and then actually just ended up causing the death. And so once her father is laying there dead on the floor, bleeding out, she calls the police, but then hangs up after realizing she will probably implicate herself. Makes sense, but like, I don't know, couldn't you have called and just left? Like, I don't know, you're a time traveler, you wouldn't even need to be there. She tells herself that there are sacrifices, and as long as Regina lives, it'll be all right, since everything happens as it always does. Not the worst mindset in the world, to be honest, but you did just kill your dad, so that's pretty fucked up. Uh, Terrible scene to watch. And then right before he passes away, he calls her the White Devil. So I don't know. It feels like the bad scenes of Claudia are just kind of like swept under the rug. I mean, this was a big scene, but it's like in the grand scheme of things, it's like, oh, Noah's evil, and we still don't really know what Claudia is up to. It seems like she tries to redeem herself after this incident, but she just killed her own dad over a confrontation. It's like she's not the best customer out there either. So it's like a lot of morals going into this. I don't even know who to root for at this point. I'm Team Claudia, and it's fucked up to be Team Claudia after this happens. But poor Egan, I don't know. Maybe she learns from her mistakes and just trying to fix the world. That's why. But R.I.P. to Egan, another character down. Unless he could appear in flashbacks. So Hannah, post the conversation with Ulrich, is going to decide to stay in 1953. I don't even want to know what this could possibly mean for the next season. I'm a little worried about it, actually, how she's going to impact the timeline. Or they're like silently writing her character off and just she's going to stay in 1953 because everyone in present day hates her, rightfully so. Either way, I'll be happy with the second outcome. The first option, we'll have to see how it plays out. But finally, to end this episode out, we have present day Jonas walking into 86 Claudia's house right after she commits the crime. She's kind of freaking out. He tells her Egan's death does not need to happen next time, and they're headed for the future. So a little collab here between the most present version of Jonas and 1986 Claudia, which we do see play out in the finale. So favorite of this episode is going to Egan. Finally starting to cook, but got held up by Claudia wanting to prevent his death. Just a tragic tale. That seemingly will always happen. Least favorite of this episode, going to the classic. Hannah shows up in 1953 just to basically taunt Ulrich, remains jealous as always, and is just really selfish and self-interested. So that'll wrap up episode 7. One more episode to go on season 2. The 8th and final episode of season 2 is titled Endings and Beginnings. What an episode with so many reveals. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. We jump this episode out with future Elizabeth in 2052 going to the sort of stash she's kept, hidden, buried, I believe. She dug it up and had this sort of box of goodies. So in that box, she has an old family photo, her fox hat that we see her wear as a kid, and pictures of older Magnus, either Magnus or Noah, I couldn't tell who it was, and Francesca / Charlotte's mom holding a baby. I was confused on if this was Magnus and Francesca, but looking at this now, it was probably Noah and her holding a baby, Charlotte, which, yeah, we'll definitely get into that. Um, so, not much there. I mean, good to see she still cares about her family. You know, she's very harsh, to put it lightly, in the 2052 seemingly. So, still has a little soft spot for her family, which I'm sure we'll get into in season 3. So, Magnus and Francesca, these two travelers, obviously, it's been kind of known that Magnus is, or we knew Magnus is a traveler. It's kind of assumed that that person with him is Francesca as well. They prepare for younger Noah to disembark on a mission, which we will find out later in the episode what that mission is. But younger Noah is still around, remember, from 1921. So the current Jonas and 86 Claudia are working together in the basement of the nuclear plant to potentially change a grain of sand and change the grand scheme of everything. So I don't like the way Jonas came back after his time with old Claudia. He seems like kind of, I don't want to say brainwashed, but like, I know what I must do type vibes, you know. Didn't really love, I don't know. I didn't, it was tough. It was tough watching, especially when future Jonas does his thing this episode. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if I trust Claudia yet. You know, I don't know who I can trust in the show besides nobody. I mean, Martha maybe, but it's like, I don't know. So, yeah, but they want to potentially change a grain of sand and change the grand scheme of everything. Like I've always said throughout this whole season podcast, I've got this idea locked in my head that, you know, the timeline is just the timeline. So I don't think they're going to change anything, but maybe they will change something. Even if you just change a grain of sand, I don't think it's going to do anything because I think if you change that grain of sand, that's already accounted for, you know? But maybe I'm wrong on that, and this is just way more complicated than I'm giving it credit for. Nonetheless, Claudia apologizes to Regina through Bartos for everything that happened. Was this the older? I think this was the older version, maybe, of Claudia. Obviously, she's going to pass away in 19. Well, it must have been the 86 version, but yeah, I mean, Claudia ran away from Regina. I know I mentioned before when she left in 86, there wasn't like too much going on, but Regina was out there and trying to live her best life, and you know, no mother in her life. That's pretty tough. So Claudia's trying now, but not sure if she'll be forgiven. You know, well, she will be forgiven later on, but we'll get to that. So, stranger version of Jonas is trying to get Martha to come with him because of the impending apocalypse, but she does not want to. And then he forces her at gunpoint, which is always good, to come with him to the bunker now because of the apocalypse. So I didn't like this kind of turn from Jonas. It felt like he was, you know, obviously he's forcing her to do it, which is like one thing, but it's like, dude, like, I don't know. I thought maybe it was a better way to go about this because you're just like being an asshole, and you know, I don't. It's hard to watch these this time travel show where like, you know what everyone's saying is important, but they just like disregard it. Like Martha just obviously just gonna disregard it because you never believe in the people. Like I don't know. It was annoying. It was an annoying confrontation because both sides were wrong. But he does force her to eventually go to the bunker at gunpoint. And yeah, lock her in there. She'll definitely stay. Nonetheless, we have Adam and Sigmundus wanting a new world, and Jonas and Claudia want to save this one. So that is what we are being framed with as the plot. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that due to Adam's actions. Like, it seems like he doesn't want to just forget this world. Like, how do you make a new world? I feel like it's kind of a narrative thing where Claudia kind of just got that narrative in Jonas's head, and he doesn't really know the true motivations of Adam. Like, why would Adam want a new world? And maybe I'm wrong on that too. Like, why would Sigmundus want a new world when they've already done so much in this one? Jonas and Claudia wanting to save this one, I get that. And I'm not even sure if that's true because Claudia wants there to be a world where, or that's what they used to entice 86 Claudia to work with present day Jonas, was to say that this doesn't have to happen, the death of Egan. So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy going on here with the Claudia Jonas storyline. So I'm going to keep an eye on that one. I don't know who to trust, like I said before. So as I mentioned before, future stranger Jonas leaves Martha in the bunker, locks her up. I'm sure she's gonna stay for a long time because, yeah, if you lock a woman in something at gunpoint and someone else comes in, they're definitely gonna stay, right? Nonetheless, Wooler actually has to admit something to Charlotte. So Wooler is the man with the one eye, which if we don't get the explanation on why he has that sick one eye sunglasses, then was this show even worth it? Was it? Yeah. A lot of people in the TV time comments are curious about how that happened to his eye. So his admission to Charlotte is he actually helped Alexander bury radioactive waste in the concrete of the nuclear plant, which is absurd. I don't know how Alexander got him to do that. Obviously, they have some sort of deal, but it seems like that's maybe where the deal stemmed from. Was he helped him do that, and then it's like, okay, you're gonna help me out, or maybe they're just boys. We don't really get full clarification on that relationship, I don't think, but insane work. You're burying radioactive waste in concrete. I think, guys, I think this might be happening across the world. Like, where are we putting nuclear waste again? I have no idea, and maybe I'm just an idiot, but I don't know. That scares me. And yeah, obviously, this radioactive waste buried in concrete, it's going to come to roost soon. So we'll see what happens with that. So Noah has had enough with Adam in the present day. He's not waging war against God, but waging war against mankind. Pulls out the gun. This is it. I'm going to shoot Adam. Noah versus Adam. The confrontation we've all been waiting for. Not really, but kind of. The gun is empty. So, yeah. Poor Noah, man. He gets shot. I don't know. It's like Noah, we've been trained to believe Noah's bad, but it's like, is Adam just worse than Noah? Probably, right? And then now Noah's dead and Adam's alive. So I guess we've seen Claudia's timeline. Granted, we don't know a lot of the time traveling stuff she's in between, but it's come to a close when Noah shoots her. And now Noah's timeline comes to a hard stop when Adam shoots him. So that was interesting to see that kind of turn of the heel. I thought maybe there was a little more context we needed for that. But I don't know. It just felt like kind of not random, but like sudden that Noah suddenly comes for Adam. And maybe I'm definitely probably missing something, so let me fill me in on the comments with that. Big reveal of this episode. We find out Charlotte is Elizabeth's daughter and her mother. Take that in for a second. So Charlotte and Elizabeth and Noah had Charlotte as a kid. And then Charlotte has Elizabeth as a kid. Moment. I don't even know what to say, man. I don't like. Ugh. Crazy twist. Like I didn't really see that one coming at all. I mean, I don't know who did, but like, damn. We'll see Noah and younger Elizabeth or young Noah and young Elizabeth in the bunker later. So maybe that's how it happens. But how does she get transformed through time to be like 50 in the year 2020? Like, how does she get born in 86 or just left in 86? I'm sure that'll be something we see play out. But I mean, damn. Two crazy parents. Noah, I mean, we see what Noah is capable of, and then Elizabeth in 2052 looks like no fucking joke. So that's crazy. Super curious to see how that one played out, but we'll have to see. So big WTF moment. Wow. There's probably some clues along the way that I just didn't see. So meanwhile, Agnes appears with Magnus and Francesca, the travelers. She's actually the one to shoot Noah. Sorry, I jumped the gun on that one as he bleeds out on the floor. So Noah is gone for now. This version of Noah, at least, is dead, killed by Agnes, which is interesting because him and Agnes had kind of a weird relationship back and forth. So Agnes is the one who ultimately does kill him. Jonas and Claudia reopen the passage that Stranger Jonas closed in season 1, at the end of season 1, and yeah, now this probably just opens the door for season 3 to be batshit crazy. I don't know if that passage is open. It's like anything can fucking happen because you can just time travel whenever you want. So I'm sure that the survivors will be time traveling like all heck, and it'll be so hard to keep up with. But hopefully it'll be easy and I'll lock in. Peter and Elizabeth at this same time run into the bunker, and them having unlocked the door means Martha runs out instantly, which, yeah, I mean, that was pretty obvious. And I don't know where Stranger Jonas went after he locked Martha in the bunker, but if you were trying to actually keep her in there, you did a bad job, buddy. So Claudia visits Regina in an attempt to bring her to the bunker. We'll see if she's able to do it. She's like, I'm sorry I missed so much of your time. We got to go now, and I'm going to save you. Bunch of events happening, so some of these will speed run through. Some of them will take it a little bit slower. So young Noah meets stranger Jonas, delivering a letter from Martha telling him to save Martha, Francesca, Bartos, Magnus, and then later himself and Agnes. So that's where he went, is to meet younger Noah. Interesting to see him have like a relationship with Noah after he knows what happens with Noah in his early days. But he does take this at face value and does attempt to actually go and save these people. So we'll see what happens with that. Claudia and Regina make it to the bunker. So yeah, not much intrigue there. They do make it to the bunker. Katharina attempts to find her way into the passage. So remember, she's been in the caves all season. And now that the passage is reopened, she actually has the potential to go back. And maybe, actually, Katharina's storyline for season 3 could actually be interesting, where she's like, it seems like she wants to go for Mikkel over Ulrich, but if she goes for Ulrich, I feel like that could be a nice side quest. If she goes for Mikkel, like, shit might get fucked. Well, in my theory, everything has already been fucked, but we'll see. And then while that's happening, Clausen sees the radioactive material being buried. Obviously, he's on this big Alexander witch hunt, so he's able to get to the nuclear power plant and then see it all play out. So it's kind of like, I don't know. Well, he has a dumb moment coming up, but he sees that radioactive material being buried. So Jonas returns home, the present version of Jonas, and he wants to come and save Martha. So obviously Martha Martha comes in when he's at his home, and they make out fully knowing who each other are, so that they know Martha is the aunt of Jonas. But okay, then it doesn't matter because they just make out. So it seems like that. This is Game of Thrones. The siblings throw it out because they don't care. So why should we care? Then while they're together in the house, Adam appears. Adam does say he wants the end of the world, and he is the trigger, but not for what Jonas thinks. So we think Adam maybe is going to do something crazy and have this machine and kind of do it like in a different way and not like influence events. Wrong. He shoots Martha. I thought for sure there was a lot of like dramatic build up during the scene. I thought for sure somebody's going to come and stop Adam from shooting Martha, but the timeline is the timeline, man, and it's going to happen. So he shoots Martha and then circles the 27th on the calendar. I'm not going to lie, it's hard to keep up with the days and what the days are and that matter, but he has circled June 27th on the calendar. And then Adam gives Jonas the choice of stopping Adam or saving Martha, which seemingly he'll do neither, but the choice is out there, so good luck with that. Now we have our super insane end of the montage, our end of episode montage here, so let's dive right into this. Charlotte tries to stop them from opening the material, but Clausen does it anyway. I mean, Clausen was just kind of a man on a mission and is essentially the one that does cause the apocalypse, which is absurd. Considering he's like the outsider from town, but I don't know. Older Jonas does go through and saves Francesca, Bartos, and Magnus from the apocalypse, so it seems like definitely Francesca and Bartos will join the Travelers. Interesting to see their roles in season 3 as some of the only survivors from the apocalypse, and Noah wanted them to save him, so that was his mission. Remember, he was put into the machine. He was told to go tell older Jonas to save them, so everything's going according to plan. Francesca, Bartos, and Magnus will be featured in season 3. Older Elizabeth does something with the machine in the future, and then the portal emerges from the radioactive waste. So this portal thing is what caused the apocalypse, which is crazy because it's also still there in 2052. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's the power plant that Jonas was breaking into in 2052. Makes sense. So that's just still there, that portal. Obviously, Elizabeth still has it on her end, so she's kind of fired it up as well. And then, so that emerges from the radioactive waste in the present day. Young Noah also makes his way to the bunker and shares a look with Elizabeth. So maybe that's where this relationship develops from, because it basically has to, because we know the other version of Noah is dead. And now thinking back on season 1, when Noah saw Elizabeth, he didn't take her a killer. So maybe that's a future, thing right there where they were doing some foreshadowing, because we saw Noah take Eric and Yasin and use them on the machine, but they just let Noah go. Remember, Elizabeth disappeared that day when she was late from school. Let Elizabeth go, not Noah go. Sorry. So maybe that's where that relationship develops from. Katharina finds a way to somewhere, so seemingly she's going to survive it out of this apocalypse. Not gonna lie, not sure if we needed her in the next season, but like I mentioned, she could have a fun side quest. If Hannah's out of the picture in 1953 living life, then we're good, but I'm sure she's gonna do some fuck shit there. Katharina, I don't know what she's going for, either Mikkel or Ulrich. I don't know where she spawns to. We'll have to see. In old, Elizabeth opened the portal to the present day. She says hi to Charlotte, hi mom, and then they seemingly, reach out, touch hands, but that's right when the apocalypse begins. I'm sure she somehow pulled Charlotte in with her to 2052, but if she didn't, RIP Charlotte. I like Charlotte a lot, but I'm sure this won't be the end of Charlotte's story. And then, so the craziest part, where we're just gonna, at the end of season 1, we had the level up to 2050, or the introduction to 2052, taking it up even another level. The way we're going to take it up another level in season 3 or 2 is another Martha appears at the house looking at dead Martha and takes Jonas. She's apparently from another world. So now we're not dealing with different timelines and different times. We're dealing with different fucking worlds. And that's, wow. Throw us right into season 3. So crazy shit happening right there. That's a season. That's season 2. Strong season. We'll get to in a second. Favorite of this episode is Jonas. Besides the Adam version, tried to save Martha, found another Martha in his older version, also tried to do the same thing and save the other travelers. Least favorite going to obviously Adam. Took out both the present day Martha and the past Noah, two of the bigger characters in the show. Seemed like he has a fucked up perspective on how things are going. So that's favorite and least favorite for episode 10, and that's a wrap on the season. This show has been great. I'm so excited to watch season 3. Keeps you on the edge of your seat. I do like the end of the episode montages. Episode 6, I thought was like these last couple episodes were pretty strong. There's never a dull moment. You can't look away at all, or else you're going to be lost. So this has been super intriguing. I'm excited to get to season 3. Season 2 or season 1, I think I slightly got season 1. What do you guys think over that? But I'm excited to dive into season 3. Pay attention. I just found a great site. That person who left the Spotify link for me about the family trees, that's great. So I'm going to be looking at that moving forward. So thank you for that. Thank you for watching this far into the video. Stay tuned for more content. We got Ballerina movie review coming up next. Besides that, sports are in kind of a dead period for the Dubcast. International Fight Week will be soon for UFC. Expect more dark content and more movie reviews on the way. So as always, be easy, y'all.